The greatest suicide is not death, but living a life you never chose. You are going to die, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 50 years. But you are going to die, and everything you built, every achievement, every relationship, every moment of pleasure or pain will fade away as if it never existed. So why are you here? Why do you wake up every morning to work, consume, distract yourself, and wait for death? Or is there something more? Something that most people don't even dare to consider because they are terrified of what they might discover. Friedrich Nietzsche spent his entire life shattering the illusions that keep us asleep. He was not a philosopher of comfort, he was a philosopher of war, and his central question was brutal in its simplicity. Are you living, or are you simply avoiding death? Because there is an abysmal difference between existing and truly living. Most people exist. They get up, follow routines, obey rules they never questioned, and chase goals that others told them mattered. They live in a kind of moral sleepwalking, repeating the same patterns generation after generation, believing they are choosing when, in reality, they are only obeying. Nietzsche saw this with a clarity that literally made him ill. He saw that modern civilization had built a gigantic invisible cage, and that all of us were inside, convinced we were free. What I am going to share with you in the next few minutes are not comforting ideas. You will not find formulas for instant happiness or steps to success here. You will find something much more dangerous. The possibility of waking up, the possibility of seeing your life as it truly is, without the lies you have told yourself to endure it. And once you see, you cannot go back to not seeing. So ask yourself right now, do you really want to know? Because if the answer is yes, then prepare yourself. You are about to encounter the most disturbing and at the same time most liberating thought a human being can face. The truth about what it means to be alive. Every morning you look in the mirror and see a face. You say your name, you recognize your reflection, you feel there is someone there, someone constant, someone real. But Nietzsche would look you straight in the eye and tell you something that would shake that certainty. That someone you believe yourself to be is a fiction. Not in a metaphorical sense, but in a literal sense. The self you defend, protect, and take pride in is a construction, a narrative you have created to survive in a world that demands coherence. From childhood, you were taught who you should be, your parents, your teachers, your religion, your culture. They all unknowingly conspired to mold your identity. They told you what was good and what was bad, what you should desire and what you should fear. And you, being small and helpless, had no choice but to believe them. You absorbed those values as if they were absolute truths. You became the product of 1,000 foreign voices, and then, in the cruelest twist, you began to believe those voices were your own. Nietzsche called this herd morality. It wasn't a gratuitous insult. It was an accurate description of how most human societies function. The herd needs everyone to think alike, feel alike, and desire the same things, because the herd is afraid. Afraid of chaos, afraid of difference, afraid of freedom. So it creates norms, laws, traditions, a whole system of control disguised as civilization. And you, dear listener of this night, have probably spent your entire life serving that system without even realizing it. Think about your deepest desires, that job you pursue, that partner you seek, that lifestyle you long for. Do you truly want them? Or do you only want what everyone around you said you should want? How many of your decisions are truly yours? And how many are echoes of others' expectations? Nietzsche understood that most people live borrowed lives. They are actors performing roles they never chose, and the most tragic part is that they don't even know they are acting. They believe their feelings are authentic, their values are their own, and their choices are free. But if you scratch just a little beneath the surface, you find the traces of absent parents, traumas, and cultural messages, repeated 1,000 times until they become invisible. Your morality, what you call your conscience, is largely the result of social conditioning. You feel guilty about things that are objectively not wrong. You are ashamed of perfectly natural desires. You limit yourself with chains that no one forced you to put on, but you wear them proudly because you believe they make you virtuous. Nietzsche saw this and felt a mixture of compassion and revulsion. Compassion because he understood the suffering it caused, revulsion because he knew that most people would prefer to remain asleep rather than awaken to this truth. Let me tell you something about how this deception works. When you were little, you had natural impulses. You wanted to scream when you were angry. You wanted to play when you had energy. You wanted to explore the world with wild curiosity. But you quickly learned that certain impulses were punished and others rewarded. Crying could mean rejection. Being too loud brought punishment. Asking uncomfortable questions made adults uneasy. So, you learned to repress, to conform, to hide. You created a mask, an acceptable version of yourself that could navigate the social world without too much pain. And over time, that mask became so heavy, so omnipresent, that you forgot you were wearing it. You began to believe that was you, the polite, responsible, predictable person, the person who never causes trouble, always does the right thing, and fits perfectly into social expectations. But beneath that mask, something was dying. Your vital instincts, your wild creativity, your capacity for wonder. All of it was buried alive under layers of conditioning. Now you live with a persistent feeling that something is missing, that there is a void at the center of your existence that you cannot fill no matter how hard you try. You buy things, chase achievements, seek relationships, but nothing satisfies that deep hunger, because what you truly long for is not something external. It is to reconnect with that part of yourself you sacrificed to be accepted. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." But here is the problem. Most people don't even have their own why. They have the why their parents gave them, or the why society sold them, or the why their religion imposed on them. And when they reach their 30s, 40s, or 50s, they suddenly realize they have spent decades chasing goals that were never truly theirs. They have climbed a ladder only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. And the weight of that discovery can be crushing. Some respond with a visible existential crisis. They leave their jobs, end their marriages, embark on desperate searches for meaning. Others simply become numb, surrender to mediocrity, resign themselves to a life of quiet routine, and distract themselves with cheap entertainment and superficial pleasures until death arrives. But there is a third option, the option Nietzsche fiercely defended. You can wake up. You can face the truth that you have been living a lie, and from that painful recognition, you can begin to build something authentic. There is a moment in the lives of some people, not all, but some, when something breaks. It may be a crisis, a loss, a moment of lucidity in the middle of routine. Suddenly you stop and ask yourself, why do I do what I do? Why do I believe what I believe? And you find no answers that satisfy you. You only find a void where your certainty used to be. That moment is terrifying. It is as if the ground beneath your feet dissolves. Everything you based your identity on, your sense of purpose, your idea of good and evil, is revealed as contingent, optional, arbitrary, and you are left suspended in nothingness, not knowing who you are or what you want. Nietzsche experienced that collapse brutally. He saw how the traditional values of Europe, the entire Christian moral edifice that had sustained Western civilization for 2,000 years, were crumbling. And he pronounced those words that would resonate for centuries: God is dead. It was not an atheistic declaration, it was a cultural diagnosis. What Nietzsche was saying is that absolute values, those supposedly eternal truths that gave meaning and direction to human life, no longer worked. Science, modernity, progress, everything had eroded faith in the transcendent. And now, humanity found itself in an unprecedented existential void. Without a divine foundation, how do you justify morality? Without a cosmic purpose, how do you give meaning to existence? Without a God to judge, why not do whatever pleases you? These questions were not abstract for Nietzsche. They were urgent, vital, dangerous. Because he knew that when a civilization loses its foundational values, one of two things can happen. Either it falls into nihilism, into the belief that nothing matters, that everything is absurd, that life lacks meaning, or it finds a new source of values, a new way to affirm existence. And here is where Nietzsche's thought becomes radical. He did not want to restore the old values. He did not want to return to religion, tradition, or the certainties of the past. He wanted something completely different. He wanted humanity to grow up, to stop needing moral crutches, to dare to create its own values. He wanted each individual to become the artist of their own life, the legislator of their own morality, the creator of their own meaning. But to get there, one first had to cross the desert. One had to experience the void, confront the absence of meaning, look into the abyss without blinking, and that is what most people cannot bear. They prefer to cling to old lies, comforting illusions, and structures that enslave them rather than face the terrifying freedom of creating their own values. So, tell me, where are you on this map? Are you still clinging to values you inherited without questioning? Or have you begun to feel that vertigo, that sensation that everything solid is fading away? If it is the latter, then you are on the threshold. You are where Nietzsche was. And what comes next will not be easy, but it could be the most important thing you ever do, because on the other side of that abyss, on the other side of that destruction of certainties, something is waiting. It is not comfort, not peace, not happiness in the conventional sense. It is something bigger, wilder, more true, the possibility of truly living, perhaps for the first time in your existence. But before you get there, you need to understand something fundamental about how you have been living until now. You need to see clearly the mechanism that has kept you trapped. The society you live in functions through a sophisticated system of rewards and punishments. We are not talking about explicit laws, although those exist too. We are talking about something much more subtle and powerful: social approval. Since you can remember, you have been trained to seek approval and avoid rejection. A child who behaves well receives smiles, praise, and affection. A child who misbehaves receives frowns, shouts, and isolation. And that pattern repeats millions of times during childhood until it becomes automatic, unconscious. You stop doing what you truly want to do and start doing what generates approval. Over time, you don't even need others to punish or reward you. You have internalized those voices. You self-censor, self-limit, and punish yourself with guilt and shame when you deviate from the approved script. You have become your own jailer, and the cell is so well constructed that you don't even see it. You believe you are choosing freely when, in reality, you are following a program installed decades ago. Nietzsche observed this with painful clarity. He saw that Christian morality, in particular, had perfected this system of internal control. It didn't need police on every corner. It had installed a policeman inside every conscience. That internal policeman constantly watches you, judging every thought, every desire, every impulse. And its judgment always favors conformity, humility, and the denial of your vitality. Do you want more than you have? That is greed. Are you proud of your achievements? That is vanity. Do you enjoy physical pleasures? That is gluttony or lust. Every natural, vital impulse is labeled as sin, as something you must repress, control, and eliminate. And the result is a sick humanity, divided against itself, in constant war between what it is and what it is supposed to be. Nietzsche said it bluntly. Morality is the best of all tools of seduction to lead humanity to the herd. He was not saying that all morality is bad. He was saying that traditional morality, the morality of the denial of life, is a disease. It is a mental virus that makes you hate your own nature, that convinces you that your humanity is something shameful that must be overcome through renunciation and sacrifice. And here comes the truly disturbing part. This system works because it promises you something in return for your obedience. It promises you salvation, or meaning, or belonging, or love. It tells you, if you repress your selfish impulses, if you sacrifice your desires, if you live according to these rules, then you will be rewarded. If not in this life, then in the next. If not by society, then by God. If not with pleasure, then with virtue. It is a deal, an exchange. You hand over your freedom, your vitality, your authenticity, and in return you receive the promise of something better. But Nietzsche saw that it is a fraudulent deal, because what you receive is never equivalent to what you give up. You sacrifice the only real thing you have, this life, these moments, this concrete existence, in exchange for abstractions, promises, and fantasies about better worlds that never arrive. And when you finally realize the deception, when you see that you have wasted decades of your life chasing rewards that don't exist, the resentment you feel is monumental. But instead of directing that resentment against the system that deceived you, the most common thing is to direct it against yourself. You blame yourself for not having been good enough, disciplined enough, believing enough. The system is designed to survive even when it fails. You can always blame yourself. There is a question Nietzsche posed that most people desperately avoid. Would you want to live your life exactly as you have lived it, over and over again, for all eternity? Every moment of pain, every failure, every humiliation, every instant of boredom, but also every moment of joy, every achievement, every instant of beauty, all of it exactly the same, infinite times. Nietzsche called this the eternal return, and it was not a metaphysical concept. It was an existential test, a way to measure if you are truly living or just surviving. Because if the idea of repeating your life eternally fills you with horror, then something is deeply wrong. It means you are living a life you fundamentally reject, a life you endure but do not love. And here is the crucial point. Most people, if they were honest, would admit they would not want to live their lives again. They have spent decades in jobs they hate, in relationships that drain them, chasing goals they don't care about, all out of fear. Fear of disappointing, fear of failing, fear of being alone, fear of being judged. They have sacrificed what they truly wanted on the altar of security, conformism, and social approval. Nietzsche despised this with every fiber of his being, not because he was cruel, but because he saw the wasted potential, the unlived life, the cowardice disguised as prudence. And his answer was simple but devastating. If you don't love your life enough to want to repeat it eternally, then you have to change it. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, but now, because every moment you spend living in a way you reject is a moment you steal from the only life you have. There is no posthumous reward, no cosmic justice, no heaven where everything is balanced. There is only this existence, these moments, and when they are over, they will be gone forever. So, what are you doing with them? Are you filling them with vitality, passion, and creation? Or are you wasting them in a lukewarm, mediocre, safe existence? Nietzsche had a brutal phrase: better to perish than to hate and fear. Better to perish twice than to make oneself hated and feared. What he was saying is that an authentic life, a life lived according to your own values, even if it leads to ruin, is infinitely superior to a life of conformity and resentment. And here we touch on one of Nietzsche's most misunderstood concepts: resentment. Resentment is not just being angry with someone. It is something much deeper and more toxic. It is the attitude of someone who cannot create and therefore denigrates, of someone who cannot affirm their own life and therefore denies the lives of others. The resentful person looks at those who are stronger, more vital, freer, and condemns them. They call them immoral, arrogant, dangerous. They create an entire morality based on the denial of life, on the glorification of weakness, on the celebration of suffering. And for Nietzsche, this was exactly what Christian morality had done. It had taken everything strong, noble, and affirmative in the human being and labeled it as sin. It had transformed vitality into vice, strength into cruelty, pride into arrogance. It had created a slave morality, a morality that said, because I cannot be strong, then being strong is wrong. Because I cannot enjoy life, then enjoying life is immoral. Because I suffer, then suffering must be virtuous. And when you understand all of this, when you see how resentment has shaped entire centuries of thought, the question arises that no one can answer for you. Will you continue to live under a morality born of fear, or will you dare to create your own? That is the point where the deception ends and real life begins. Because waking up does not mean becoming invincible. Waking up means accepting that you can no longer hide behind excuses, dogmas, or old wounds. It means looking your own existence in the face and deciding what value you want to give it. In the end, Nietzsche never wanted followers. He wanted individuals capable of sustaining themselves, and perhaps that is the most disturbing and most liberating message of all. You are not obliged to live the life you inherited. You can destroy it. You can rebuild it. You can become someone who, if they had to live their life eternally, would not run away but would say, yes, again. Because you will die, yes, but while you are alive, the only true tragedy is living as if you were already dead.